You're rewarding men for being competitive and then complaining that there's a patriarchy. Like, do you understand the problem here? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now these women are like, I want to pick the man who's like less likely to die. So I'm going to pick the broadest shoulders, the tallest guy, the one with the strongest jawline, the one who has like, again, the reason why tattoos look way more attractive on
the
men
high value man,
exactly,
the high value alpha male,
the high value alpha male.
Somebody on the show recently has said that doesn't exist. But the fact of the matter is like men must become and women just are. Men have a burden of performance. Men think hierarchy. We build societies, we organize societies from a hierarchy, whereas women tend to do it in the round. They tend to do it more communitarian. So women tend to adopt more egalitarian style politics, social structures, things like that. Again, because women being the vulnerable sex, whereas men being the disposable sex. Men tend to deal in hierarchies. There's the guy, I'm going to ruin the chain of command because I don't know this, but you got like the admiral and you got the sergeant and you go all the way down to the chain of command, all the way down to the private, right? Then you got the CEO all the way down to the guy who's the janitor. So you've got so men tend to organize societies based on ideally merit hierarchies, whereas when women come into social power, they tend to take it and put it into a communitarian style. Now, it's not to say that women don't compete with other women, they do, but they do it from within the collective, as opposed to men want to get a step up. They've got to defeat the guy. They got to defeat the final boss at the end of that. Even video games, right, are still based on, okay, I got to go through these guys before I get to the final boss, and then I beat the game, right? That's a hierarchy. That is
got to get a fatter ass.
Yeah, it just depends. Like I talk to these guys who say, we're Rollo, I'm not really competitive, blah, blah, blah. I go, I bet you are. I bet you can play chess and you kick ass at it. I bet you play this video game or you play Call of Duty and you get real competitive in that. Grand Theft Auto, you get real competitive in those things, the things that you like. That competition is there. It's just like you don't want to see it because you're like, the desire, the want to win is something that guys are innately, as part of our psyches, is we got to be able to excel in something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like fighting. It could be hey, I'm a better mathematician than this guy is. There's that want to be better than whatever your peer group is, and that's because men tend to see things in hierarchies and women tend to organize things in the round.
Consider what he just said.
And therefore, there has to be an alpha, the beta, the delta, the omega, the gamma, the sigma's outside of it. No, it's not really.
Because there's a hierarchy. So now consider this, right? Consider this concept. We have two genders, and one of the gender, the men, they want access to the women for reproductive access, and then just everything. Like when you consider like a man's desires, so many of them are based around access to women. You know, solve Sudoku puzzles.
Survival and reproduction are really the base drives for men.
So let's consider that. So if men are going to do things to compete with other men in order to get access to women, and women they value these men who are more competitive and more successful. So we have a gender of men who are rewarded with sexual access for being more successful, for being more aggressive, for being more competitive, and for being more competent. Of course there's a patriarchy. You reward the men who are the most competitive with the most sexual access, which means you're going to force an entire gender through millions of years of evolution to be more competitive. That's the reason why we have 17 times as much testosterone as women do. So as doing so, now we have now in a vacuum, we have one gender full of women who have a testosterone level, let's say between 60 and 100, and men are like 800, 900. Of course we're going to be more assertive. And in these fields, you're going to see men dominate in fields like, law enforcement or, politics or whatever, these different fields.
You have to be assertive.
But where you have to be assertive and you have to be competitive. You're rewarding men for being competitive and then complaining that there's a patriarchy. Like, do you understand the problem here? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Their whole purpose in life to survive and replicate is to get access to you, and you're only giving access to the men who are capable, who are the most capable and competent, and those things make them more successful in society.
Patriarchy is the natural outcome of how we evolve. It's
understand what he said? He didn't say it was good or bad. He said it was good or bad. He said it was a natural outcome. That is the truth. It is a natural outcome. That's what happens. So when you have that whole situation, then people are like, oh, well, the whole reason that there's strip clubs and the whole reason there's pornography is for the subjugation of women. And I'm like, then why are there gay strip clubs? Why is there gay? That it doesn't make any sense. No, it's there because part of us, it's that dog in it. You know how competitive Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods were, and they also cheated on their wives. Do you remember that? It's that dog. It's that psychopath that's in there.
If you look at if you look in its most idealized sense, okay, I'm not saying you take away all the horrible things, like the exploits that could come from patriarchy, because that's the first thing that feminists will want to say is like, well, this is why patriarchy is bad. It's tyranny. And it's like, no, you're talking about androcentrism. That's a whole nother thing. When you talk about patriarchy in its ideal sense is a much more balanced system than feminism ever will be, because patriarchy still implies that a man has the responsibility to take care of his kids, to take care of his wife, to take care of his community, because you have this masculine duty, this patriarchal masculine responsibility to do these things. The problem is there also, at least in an idealized sense, is there's an authority that's implied in patriarchy that says, if I have these responsibilities, then I need this authority to affect those responsibilities. Yeah. So it's a much more, so guys who are not responsible for their kids, guys who slack off, guys who don't live up to their patriarchal, masculine responsibilities, they're still going to be, ridiculed. They're still going to be lambasted. They're still going to be criticized for doing those things. But the thing is they still have, in an idealized sense, they still have that authority. The problem is right now, when we look at patriarchy, we only look at it from the terms of like it's tyranny, that it's going to be something that is meant to crush the poor little souls of women, right? The problem with that idea is that today we have all of these responsibilities. This is under feminism or gynocentrism. Men have 100% responsibility and 0% authority to affect that. So every time people, especially like traditional conservatives, come at me and they say, well, we're going to save the West because we need guys to man up and take more responsibility, and you got to be you got to get a good job, and you got to get a good education, and you've got to be a leader at your church and in the business and in your community and everything else. And it's like leader. The problem is whenever we talk about leadership, when it comes to masculinity, that's a hierarchy. We're still talking about, if you're a leader, that means you're at the top of a hierarchy of guys who are beneath you. Okay, there's no equality, there's no egalitarianism when you're expected to be the leader. The problem with it is you got this leader who doesn't have the authority to affect the responsibilities that we expect that leader to take care of. Right. So we got this guy who's got 100% responsibility and 0% authority. That's the definition of slavery. So if you have 100% authority and 0% responsibility, that's the definition of tyranny. So when we say, when people come at me and they start talking about like traditional values, this, and we're going to see more of this, by the way, in the election cycle, in the 2024 election cycle. Whenever conservatives come at me, I throw that argument at them. They got nothing to say about that. There's no coming back from that whatsoever. Well, like when we talk about I think the topic was like, what's a high value man, and people are coming at me that recently. And I think that the problem we have with like what is high value is because we're still talking about masculine responsibilities. Mm-hmm. What is it? Should you have? Should you have $100,000 in the bank? Should you have a Lambo? Should you have access to hot and whatever it is? The thing is, I break it down this way. A high-value guy is the guy that other men want to be and other women want to. That's pretty much what it comes to. Everything else is context from there. So you can say, well, I want to be the guy who has who's draped across a Lamborghini, goes to yacht parties, he's making $3 million a year, and he's got a roster of 5 or 6 really hot supermodels. Okay, so is that a high-value man? In some context, it could be Dan Bilzerian. Is Dan Bilzerian a high-value man? Okay, there's another school of thought that says no, you have to be married and you have to have 5 kids, and they all have, and you have to have another on the way, and you have to be
everybody's definition
reproduce.
Definitely,
but essentially, what it comes down to, the high-value guy, and this is I'm getting this straight out of Dr. Hector Garcia's book, Alpha God. 3 things have defined high-value, powerful men throughout history. And that has been resources, money, whatever, territory, the space that you have, and then access to beautiful, preferably virginic, but like beautiful, young, fertile women. So that's been true for Egyptian pharaohs and the Caesars and dynastic emperors of China and the Forbidden City, to tribesmen in the Amazon rainforest. They all have those 3 things in common, which, by the way, most primates have in common as well. So it could be chimps and gorillas, bonobos, whatever. It's the same thing. The alpha male of that troop of monkeys or whatever, They protect territory. They have access to resources within that territory, and he has access to a harem of fertile, female monkeys. Right? Very similar to that. So when we're talking about what's a high value man, he's the guy that other men want to be and other women want to have sex with and reproduce with. Now, how that plays out to the guy in the fishing village in the coast of Chile might be a whole lot different than the guy who's in Miami or in Brickell right now or in Las Vegas. It just depends on what the context happens to be for what that guy happens to find himself in.
What ecosystem you're in, really.
More or less.